The recent years have brought dramatic changes in the livestock sector, driven by population growth, rapid increases in per capita consumption in Asia, spikes in prices. All of this and emerging diseases have put livestock on the spot. The big picture has been to address food security separately from climate change. For ILRI, it's critical that in the developing country context, we need to address these two together. Climate change will make agriculture more variable. Livestock play a key role in buffering the system in these conditions. Thus, we can expect many poor people will increase their livestock production as a response to climate change.
G'day, how are you? Michael Mackenzie back with you on Bush Telegraph here on ABC Radio National. My guest is Ian Wright from the International Livestock Research Institute. Ian, we should be reducing livestock numbers, shouldn't we?
I think we have to be very careful how we interpret these sorts of numbers in a global context. For example, only a small amount of total emissions from livestock comes from sub-Saharan Africa. But in places like Africa and in parts of Asia, livestock are very, very important to the livelihoods of millions of poor people. The amount of animal products consumed by poor people in developing countries tends to be quite low, but it's absolutely crucial to their nutritional well-being.
In poor countries, farmers don't have access to good feed supplements, to good roads, to credit, to finance the production. So if we enhance all those factors, then farmers will, out of their own interest, feed animals more efficiently and thus reduce methane. Improving feeding is one of the key interventions to improve the efficiency of livestock systems. This allows us to produce less methane per kilo of output and thus reduce pressure on natural resources, particularly tropical forests.
There's lots more consumption in the world, there's lots more stresses on the world's resources, and it's no longer a case of just being able to expand livestock production. We have to get the kind of systems right with better feeding and better breeding. So the work we've been doing in Hyderabad, looking at food feed crops, has relevance to all the smallholder systems in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and even Southeast Asia, where an important feed resource for animals are the staple crop residues.
We're working now in Hyderabad to improve crop residue, fodder quality, in looking how that can be translated into gains to farmers per kilogram they are selling. Climate change certainly has an effect of what kind of crop farmers grow and the direct effect on the fodder quality which we can get out of it. So I guess the urgency to work on fodder is certainly increasing.
Feed is one of the major constraints to dairy, so we have a big component on feed in this project. What we're trying to do is to make sure we learn lessons from other feed projects in ILRI, from India, from Nigeria, from Syria. Hubs are areas where farmers can get their input and services and sell their produce. By putting everything in one place, it helps farmers getting the right input at the right price, the right quality as well, and allows them to sell their produce on time. By helping our partners setting up hubs, we help poor farmers, women as well, or youth, to access those markets. Currently, the project covers 3 countries in East Africa: Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda.
In Southern Africa, we've been busy with 2 markets-related projects, concentrating mainly on sheep and goats. Many smallholder farmers find that market access is a constraint to improvement in livelihoods. Our concept is to address the whole value chain, from farmers all the way up to consumers, and the various costs that occur in that system, such as the costs of transport, licensing and access and so on. By taking a whole chain approach, we're not only asking the question, how do we make farmers better off? We're asking, how do we change the system so that everybody can be better off? Both these projects have involved quite a cast of partners, and we've been operating in Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Botswana and South Africa.
Well, risk is an important concept because it affects the lives of smallholder producers who depend mainly on rain-fed agriculture for their livelihoods. And we know that one of the major sources of risk is actually climatic risk. So indeed it has a huge impact on the production possibilities, but it also has knock-on effects on markets because if you have variable production, it is very difficult for markets to be organized in an efficient way, in a low-cost manner. Things are indeed becoming more risky for farmers, and the more dependent they become on markets, the more vulnerable they are to the negative consequences of markets not functioning in the way that we expect them to work. And we know that one of the ways that households cope is to take the children out of school. And in some extreme cases, feed their children less food. So we really need to think of new ways of buffering them from these negative consequences.
This area has a population, pastoralists, whose livelihood is really affected by these climate extremities. We have to look for new solutions. So this is where we came up with this particular idea of trying to insure them against the risks that they're facing. Clearly, when there's been a drought, there's no forage on the ground. So we're using satellite-based images to get us information about the level of greenness.
This was taken in February 2009.
We actually designed the project. We designed the insurance contracts using the relationship between satellite information, data that has been collected on livestock mortality and so on in this area. This is a very innovative concept, and it's something that allows the risk management benefits of insurance to be provided to populations such as these that are living in remote areas and so on.
ILRI uses quite a lot of GIS in its work. You can have maps indicating where the people live, where the livestock is, what kind of natural resource base is there, and then you can use a GIS to actually look for relationships between these different factors.
This shows changes in the length of the growing period from 2000 up to the 2090s.
The effects of climate change are going to be different in different places. You can use GIS to see if we follow this scenario, what will be the impacts in which place.
With increased demand for food, one of the key needs is to increase water productivity in agriculture. This means getting more food with less water. What's very new to this, and a contribution made by the International Livestock Research Institute, is to inject the idea that we have to factor livestock into water management and development. Some of the recent research being conducted with ILRI and its partners in the CGIAR Challenge Program on Water and Food recognize now that we can easily maintain the same levels of livestock production in Africa and reduce water use by at least 50, maybe 90% in some cases.
The One World, One Health concept is actually an idea that the health of animals and humans and the environment they live in are closely, inextricably related, and that best results for human health come when you take into consideration environmental health and animal health. ILRI has had three major sets of projects going on. One of these is looking at the zoonotic diseases which are of concern to poor people. In terms of food safety, we've had some long-standing projects in Kenya, and more recently we've expanded into another 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and also India and other countries in Asia. Another of our activities is all around the issue of avian influenza, because of course the major concern is that it can mutate into a trillion-dollar pandemic.
If this is the infected area, you can have...
We're working with government veterinarians in the Indonesian context, and I was training the veterinarians in the participatory epidemiology methods that they need to use in order to actually track the change in disease incidence as we apply the different control measures. We're focusing on emerging diseases, so avian influenza, but also things like Rift Valley fever. And we're trying to move it towards a more systems approach to the issue. We're looking at how changes in veterinary services over time have encouraged or discouraged emerging diseases. And also the role of small farmers in animal health and disease control, the economics of diseases and why they occur, the sociology and the political platforms, and the international organizations and their roles. We're trying to understand the entire context.
There's good news for cattle rearers in 11 countries across East and Southern Africa with the announcement of a vaccine against a disease called East Coast fever. 25 million cattle are thought to be at risk. And with millions of people reliant on their cattle for food and income, this vaccine could prove life-saving. I spoke to Henry Chiara, a scientist with the International Livestock Research Institute.
Trials have been done in very many countries. This vaccine protects more than 98% of the animals, and for life.
In this area, lots of vectors like ticks and tsetse thrive. And therefore, these animals are constantly exposed to multiple pathogens at any single time. That brings severe disease constraints to livestock production in this region. The project is unique in that it's not dealing with just one disease or two, but the entire burden of infectious diseases that affect these animals.
ILRI has always been interested in African cattle, but new technologies suddenly made it possible to sequence African cow genomes at relatively low cost. In a changing climate, African cattle have many of the qualities that other farmers would like to start needing, particularly better drought tolerance. We have identified about 15 million differences between the African cattle and European cattle. Within the next 2 to 3 years, the new technologies should make it possible to identify variants that could make a major contribution to cattle breeding in Africa.
In the times of climate change, the livestock sector actually plays a very significant role in terms of livelihoods, in terms of land use, and in terms of environmental impact, as much as contributing to economic growth. Our interest in UNEP is to extend our work into relating more closely to the kind of research and initiatives that ILRI is focusing on in terms of sustainable development.
As natural resources get increasingly scarce, we as researchers need to find more sustainable ways of feeding the world. There will be hard trade-offs, and science can help us manage them. These challenges will only get more complex in the face of climate change. We will have to work with new actors, a wider range of academic disciplines, and work in new ways. Only by doing this will livestock research deliver on its promise to benefit people.